But actually, I forgot to tell you, we were talking about like our first week, what people had to say. Well, the WNBA fined me for
No! You got fined for episode 1?
Dude, they fined me $1,500. I'm like, what? I'm like, this is just the beginning. I was like, you're kidding.
Sophie Cunningham's general manager receives an email with that dreadful subject line every time she opens her lips to speak the truth about what's going on in the WNBA. Another fee, another punishment for having the guts to speak the truth. They triple down this time instead of just doubling down.
They fined her again. Sophie Cunningham has now been fined 4 times this season. She's had 4 separate fines this season. And she got fined for comments on a podcast episode about referees. And it wasn't even like it was that bad.
The voices are becoming more audible. The level of frustration is becoming out of control. Furthermore, the unimaginable is currently being freely debated in sports forums and on social media sites worldwide. Fans of Sophie Cunningham are making it quite evident that they have had enough. Regardless of the repercussions that Commissioner Cathy Engelbert continues to impose on her, they want her to quit the WNBA completely and express her opinions.
Man, leave Sophie Cunningham alone, Cathy Engelbert. Don't nobody care about that corrupted WNBA and those corrupted referees. Y'all want to fine her $500. Why? Because y'all feeling some type of way because you, as the commissioner, not doing your job for that bum league. You hear me? At the end of the day, y'all have so many injuries. It's crazy. Y'all have over 150 injuries this year recorded. That's insane. Something not right.
What began as a straightforward podcast debut has grown into something much more. Sophie Cunningham was fined $1,500 within days of the first episode of her new podcast, Show Me Something, which she started with Colin Cowherd's media empire and The Volume. Not a smack on the wrist, not $500 this time. Having the gall to admit that WNBA referees are fallible human beings, while also pointing out that they make far too many mistakes, is worth $1,500.
If they didn't like you then, they sure aren't going to like you now. Sophie Cunningham has been making waves with the new podcast that she is now featured in, courtesy of The Volume. Sophie Cunningham letting it all out and not holding back one.
Subscribe if you're enjoying it. The outrageousness of what transpired here will make your blood boil, so let's dissect this. In today's WNBA, Sophie Cunningham did something groundbreaking while recording her podcast. She was honest. I quote her when she says, "I know I would make mistakes all the time if I were a referee. I'm not implying that your work is easy, but what are you doing when a straightforward call is made repeatedly in front of your face?" She credited them. She admitted that their work is challenging. She even admitted that she wouldn't be skilled at it.
And she pulls me aside and she goes, "Come here, Soph, I have to talk to you." And this was in like front of everybody. And I was like, "What did I do now?" And she just smiled and she goes, "Hey, they're going to fine you again." They're like, I was like, I even told them, I even credited them that their job was hard. I did say that. And I said that I would not be good at it.
She then had the audacity to call attention to the obvious. They simply aren't consistent enough. As if that were one thing. Cool if you're going to foul me and you're on the opposing team. However, let me do it to you. She was fined $1,500 as a result. Nor for insulting officials, nor for attacking people personally, and not for going beyond any bounds of professionalism. For voicing what every coach, player, fan, and pundit has been saying all season, she was fined. The officiating is not always reliable.
In the world of what they dealing with. So you telling me if I'm getting bullied, I can't make a video about it? You gonna punish me because I'm letting everybody know and the whole world know what's going on with me and that I'm crying out for help? So you gonna make me the bad guy?
Despite going above and beyond to be fair and balanced, acknowledging the challenges of officiating and giving them the benefit of the doubt, this woman was nonetheless hit with a $1,500 fine for speaking the truth. Everyone in my locker room is like, oh God, like what is she going to say next? Sophie disclosed on her podcast. Because they are afraid of being associated with her honesty, even her teammates are being cautious. The response from her teammates demonstrates just how absurd this situation has gotten. What makes this even more ridiculous, though, is this. Sophie has already dealt with the WNBA fine machine.
Is it uncommon for coaches or players to get fined in a professional league when talking about officiating? No, that's not uncommon. However, when your league is looking worse than the NFL on officiating, you know what you might ought to do? Sit down in the corner and shut the bleep up. And maybe you ought not be fining your players over it, because your officiating is dog shit.
She was fined $500 for lip-syncing to Sabrina Carpenter's Man-Child in a TikTok video. With more than 1.3 million views, the video became widely popular. And Sophie's attitude was encapsulated in her response to the fine. I have no idea why I find this humorous. Like, all right, buddy, you got it. Because there aren't any more pressing issues with our league at the moment. And that was only the start. In addition, she received a $900 fine for standing up for CaitlinClark during the memorable altercation with the Connecticut Sun. Sophie intervened and conveyed a strong message after JCS Sheldon jabbed Clark in the eye and Marina Mabry pushed her to the ground. Sheldon was then kicked out with a harsh foul. Tamper with our star. Accept the consequences. She received a fine of about $1,000 for defending her teammate against targeted harassment.
It wasn't that long ago that Sophie Cunningham made this little TikTok video. And in said TikTok video, and you can see right here, this was July 23rd, she put this up and said she got fined $500 by the WNBA for criticizing the refs.
The statistics are absolutely startling, so let's do the math. Due to these confirmed infractions, Sophie Cunningham has received at least $2,900 in fines this season. $1,500 for her podcast remarks, $900 for defending CaitlinClark, and $500 for the TikTok. For speaking the truth, standing up for her colleague, and having thoughts on the caliber of officiating, she received about $3,000. For comparison, the starting salary for WNBA rookies is approximately $60,000. These fines are a sizable portion of the salary of someone earning that kind of money. However, Kathy Angelbert and her front desk thugs failed to see this lovely irony. Sophie Cunningham's power has increased with each fine. Her social media following skyrocketed from about 350,000 to over 1.6 million in the instant following the Connecticut Sun incident. Millions of people viewed and interacted with the $500 TikTok fine.
After 6 years of anonymity, Sophie Cunningham has suddenly become a superstar this season. Why? How did she accomplish the previously unachievable? How did she become a star in a league that seems to be allergic to star power? To her credit, Sophie Cunningham used her brain. She noticed that the path to stardom had already been cleared for her. She emulated the strategy that was utilized by Draymond Green.
In her podcast, Sophie herself called attention to the ridiculousness of this. 95% of WNBA viewers concur with me. She is entirely correct. WNBA officiating is a complete failure, as evidenced by every statistic, fan survey, and social media conversation. For months, players from all throughout the league have been saying it. According to Angel Ree, the officiating needs to be improved, and I don't care if I'm penalized. The Chicago Sky, the way the league handled different crises, was described by Elizabeth Williams as being extremely immature. Head coaches who have protested officiating and been fined include Stephanie White, Becky Hammond, and Natasha Howard. We hear the concerns, Commissioner Kathy Engelbert said, compelled to acknowledge the issues. We use that information. Every play is examined. It's critical to maintain consistency. Our officials are being evaluated independently. There are consequences. Consequently, we must keep working on it. How precisely is Sophie Cunningham incorrect to draw attention to the same problems if the commissioner acknowledges that consistency is an issue and is striving to address it? Sophie is being targeted for reasons other than fines. The goal is to silence women's basketball's most genuine voice. It was more than just defending a colleague when she stood up for CaitlinClark during that Connecticut Sun altercation. It was about resisting a culture that permits bitterness and jealousy to materialize into physical aggression. The only player with the courage to point out what everyone sees is Sophie. Officials are allowing players who are angry about CaitlinClark's success to target her on a regular basis.
But, I mean, here's the thing. Are the WNBA referees just kind of bad, especially this season? Yeah, they are. And I think they're just bad all around. You know, it's not even just like one player or one team or anything else like that. Like, they're just overall like really bad. But here's the thing, right? Here's what I think, and this is not just pertaining to the WNBA, but just any sports league that has some sort of referee or just some sort of refereeing official. I think after every game, there should be a post-game conference for the referees, just like how there are for the players. And like I said, not even just in the WNBA, but in all sports leagues, because some of the calls that are made, I genuinely look and I'm wondering if I'm watching the same game as the rest.
This poisonous atmosphere is aptly captured by Sophie's description of the mindset of her old team. I've heard Phoenix say things like, "We're going to show her what the W really is," in their locker room. To a certain degree, I understand. That's how you're going to handle every rookie entering the league. There's simply more for her, though. She is currently in her second year. As a member of her team, I find myself wondering, what are people doing? It's simply too much. Sophie's predicament is made even more frustrating by the way the league handles her in contrast to the players who are genuinely generating issues. She acknowledges officiating errors on her podcast and receives a $1,500 fine. Players are slapped on the wrist for purposefully targeting and hurting opponents. After a public uproar, Marina Mewbray, who had previously only been given a technical penalty for blindside CaitlinClark with a cheap shot that may have seriously injured her, was raised to a flagrant. The WNBA's Cathy Engelbert has a very clear message. "We'll bankrupt you if you speak the truth about our shortcomings." Players on the court will hardly notice if you actually hurt them.
You have seen players in our league try to like toughen up Caitlin. I know the talks that Phoenix had in the locker room of like, no, we're going to prove her, we're going to show her what the W really is. I'm like, what are people doing? It's just too much.
Finally, someone who gets it. Finally, someone in the WNBA who understands this thing called business.
However, Sophie Cunningham finds their intimidation strategies inconsequential. She has consistently demonstrated that genuineness triumphs above political correctness. She wasn't being vulgar when she branded CaitlinClark's detractors dumb. She was stating facts from mathematics. Clark is the indisputable face of the WNBA, as evidenced by every attendance statistic, TV rating, item sale, and social media metric. Those who argue differently are either dishonest or have delusions. Sophie's explanation of Clark's degree of celebrity puts it all in perspective. The following is cult-like. I'm serious. For example, consider the most well-known individual you have ever met or known. Multiply it by 10 or 20. It's crazy. She described how A-list celebs like Travis Kelce would fly to Iowa City to see Clark play collegiate basketball. No WNBA player has ever attained the level of mainstream superstardom like this one has. The only one who is sincere enough to admit it in public is Sophie. Sophie's financial burden as a result of these fines shows how out of touch the WNBA leadership truly is. Sophie's $1,500 fine is equal to a $200,000 penalty for an NBA player when you compare her WNBA income to the average NBA player salary. There have only been a few severe fines in the NBA's history, and none of them were for anything even close to what Sophie did. It's completely ridiculous.
She calls out the people out there who refuse to say CaitlinClark is the face of the league. People who would rather say this person and that person. What about her? What about her? No, there is only one face of the WNBA. There's only one person that has casuals sitting down in front of a TV, glued to their sofa, watching the WNBA. Sophie Cunningham.
The way Sophie's teammates respond to these punishments is even more telling. Her teammates weren't shocked when she told them about the $1,500 fine. They were afraid. They are aware that authenticity and honesty are penalized in Cathy Engelberg's WNBA. It says volumes about the toxic culture at the top of this league that professional athletes are afraid to talk openly about their working conditions. Fans of women's basketball are in dire need of real voices, as demonstrated by Sophie's ascent to fame. There's more to her loud podcast than just amusement. Anyone who wants the unvarnished truth about what's actually going on in the WNBA has to listen to it. By being authentic, Sophie created a media empire while other athletes rehearsed their statements and fear upsetting league officials. Sophie Cunningham receives a fine for being honest about officiating and admitting that it's a challenging job. Cathy Engelbert, meanwhile, manages a league where the biggest star is pursued while earning a commissioner's pay. One player is solely responsible for attendance, and the officiating is so poor that even the commissioner acknowledges it needs improvement.
Now, the thing about this is, now that Sophie is bringing it up, now ESPN is falling by the wayside of her and actually agreeing that there's some extra sauce going on when it comes to CaitlinClark getting fouled, getting bullied a little bit, poked in the eye, all that stuff, man. So let's get to that. Why would you want to hurt what everybody is watching? That doesn't make sense. All right.
Sophie's transformation from role player to media mogul occurred as a result of her realization of a concept that Cathy Engelbert and her colleagues in the front office failed to grasp. Fans don't want sterile interviews and business jargon. They desire truthfulness.
Authenticity is what they seek.
Even if it means spending money, they want someone who will point out the emperor's lack of clothing. The WNBA has suffered greatly as a result of each fine. Sophie became well-known on social media after receiving a $500 TikTok punishment. For CaitlinClark admirers, the $900 Connecticut Sun fine made her a folk hero. She has now become one of the most significant voices in sports journalism as a result of the $1,500 podcast fine. Instead of looking for Sophie, Cathy Engelbert ought to be writing checks to her at this rate. More than any marketing effort the WNBA has ever launched, she has increased the league's visibility and involvement.
All she said was talking about, the refs needing to protect. I'm pretty sure. Was it not for her saying the refs need to protect CaitlinClark? I'm pretty sure that's what she essentially said. The refs need to protect CaitlinClark. And CaitlinClark said, finally someone did it. She basically talked about being the refs need to protect the face of the league.
Sophie Cunningham criticizing referees isn't the actual scandal. The WNBA prefers to keep criticism at bay rather than address the issues that are being brought up. They find the messenger rather than dealing with the officiating irregularities that every coach, player, and fan gripes about. The players who have the courage to defend their biggest stars are punished rather than shielded from targeted harassment. Sophie Cunningham is the epitome of what the WNBA ought to desire: genuineness, devotion, bravery, and the capacity to relate to supporters of various backgrounds. She has transformed criticism into credibility, fines into wealth, and controversy into influence. However, Cathy Engelbert's solution to the crime of having opinions is to continue making checks from Sophie's bank account. WNBA fans around the world are clearly hearing the message. The reaction to Sophie's posts regarding these discoveries is consistently the same: tremendous backing for her candor and distaste for league administration.